Hello Internet, it's Mike from Camp Out There. I use he and they pronouns and it's time for another queer history lesson, and today we are talking about ancient Egypt.
Somebody told me you had a boyfriend who looked like a girlfriend I hadn't
So first we're going to talk about myths. And what is a myth? Well, a myth is a story that a culture invents to tell to its people to explain how the world works. Like why things happen, how people should act, what people should do, that kind of thing. It can give people a better context for how their individual story fits into the story of the whole universe, which is why I'm kind of jealous of ancient Egyptian queers, because they had some awesome stories to explain to them. Okay, hold up. First of all, I am no linguist. I'm not even good at speaking English most of the time. So I've done my best to figure out how to pronounce all these words, but I'm probably going to mess all of them up, and I am so sorry in advance. So here's me doing my best. Anyway, in the beginning there was Atum. Atum was the creator of the gods. Their name roughly translates to perfection, and they were the first god to exist. They created all the other gods and the entire universe. And while most ancient mythologies start with like a male god and a female god, and they come together in kind of like a fertility metaphor to create the universe, or it's a story about a single male god who is all-powerful and he can do whatever he wants and he can create the whole universe all by himself because the men who wrote those stories were scared. Instead of those, the Egyptian universe was created by Atum, who had both male and female qualities and has been referred to as non-binary by some modern historians. Next up in the god parade, we have Nephthys, who was known as the unmarried virgin, also referred to as lesbian by some translators, who spent most of her time with Isis, #galpals, helping Isis raise her children like the cool gay aunt that so many of us have. And then comes along Set, who is the brother of Osiris, the god of chaos, storms, and war. One time, Set became super jealous of Horus, who was the king of the gods and had like the throne of the gods. So, to steal the throne from Horus, Set set out with a master plan, which started with discrediting him by way of having a huggy-kissy relationship with him. Set said to Horus, "Come, let us spend a pleasant hour at my house." Horus answered, "With pleasure, with pleasure." When it was evening, a bed was spread for them, and they lay down. And then some stuff happened that I can't repeat on a family-friendly YouTube video. Also, a text written around 2000 BCE has a story, and from it, quote, "The divine person of Set said to the divine person of Horus, 'How beautiful all are your buttocks.'" So Set was just like, dang. The historian Malik says, "Set unquestionably displays exclusive homosexual tendencies, which means a homosexual is one of the most ancient central archetypes in Egyptian mythology." And by the way, Set's favorite food was lettuce, which is one of the few plants in the plant kingdom that does not reproduce sexually with a male and female part. Subtext. So around this time in the Egyptian mythology, we have the big four. Osiris, who is a straight male, Isis, who is a straight female, Set, who is obviously a gay man, and Nephthys, who is widely believed to be a lesbian. Which is kind of cool to have equal representation going as far as like cisgender things go. Speaking of gender, next up we have the god Hapi, who is the god of the flooding of the Nile. Hapi was depicted in art by having breasts and a large belly, which were typically female ways of displaying a person, but she was also depicted as having a false beard on and also wearing a loincloth, which were exclusively male ways to depict a person. Hapi has often been described as being intersex, but there are also interpretations that describe them as being non-binary, a third gender, or a mix of the two binary genders. In 1835, a coffin was discovered that was thought to be a woman's coffin. The mummy inside had breasts, large hips, was wearing a pink skirt, but also had a beard painted on the wrappings. Researchers at the time were kind of confused about the whole beard thing. Years later, in 2016, a CT scan of the body showed off that it was actually biologically male, and the hips and breasts were just padding worn under the clothes. So it would seem that this mummy was sent off to the afterlife equipped to live as their preferred gender and not the one they were assigned at birth. Must be nice, eternally. Okay, so the whole Egyptian afterlife thing is so complicated, we're gonna have to go to the context corner. Welcome back to the context corner, brought to you by Malek Al-Kashef. Egyptians have a very complicated idea of how one gets into the afterlife, but one of the short versions is that it's easier for men. Surprise! It's our old friend, religious patriarchy! When being buried, the two binary genders would have their bodies painted, yellow for women and red for men. Sometimes a very important woman, or a woman that they just wanted to help get into the afterlife a little easier, they would paint her body red like a man, so that she would be magically transformed into a man, for the transition from life to the afterlife. Then she would be painted yellow when that process was over, once she had safely gotten to the other side. Just the fact that they believed that painting a woman like a man would magically transform her into one, or that burying a mummy with fake breasts and hips would magically turn a man into a woman for the afterlife, to me is just more evidence that ancient Egyptians believed that your gender had more to do with your presentation than your actual biology. Another example of that would be the female pharaoh Hatshepsut, who demanded that all artistic depictions of her would show her as presenting male. Some historians believe that the way Egyptians thought about gender was so different from our own that one linguist even said, "There is no grammatical evidence that the Egyptians even subscribed to a gender binary at all, that instead they viewed gender as more a social role that you take and has nothing to do with your biology." So check out these pottery shards. They're from Middle Kingdom Egypt, which was 2050 to 1700 BCE. And they have 3 different words for gender on them. Tai, which means male, Ht, which means female, and Sht, or Sekhet, which could be a totally different third gender thing that we don't even have in our culture that would explain like Atum and Hapi. In 1964, Western archaeologists discovered the tomb of Khnumhotep and Ninkhnum, and they are believed by many historians and scholars to be the very first same-sex couple in ancient history, recorded at least. The assumed romantic relationship between the two was based on the way they were standing nose to nose and embracing, which is a way that you would only show people that were married and in love. The two were overseers of the manicurists of the king, and because back then pharaohs and kings were seen as the earthly embodiments of the sun god Ra, having anything to do with the tending of their body or their beauty regimen meant that you were like very high up in society and had a very honored position. It's like ancient queer arrow for the straight pharaoh. Above the picture of the two of them just basically making out in front of everybody, get a tomb, guys, are hieroglyphics that translate to joined in life, joined in death. And a celebrity couple joining of their two names, kind of like Brangelina. And that makes them this week's Mike's Super Gay OTP. Congratulations. Congratulations, guys. As with every week, there are thousands of years worth of gay Egyptian things we could get into, but I gotta go. I will see you next week.
هيدي حريتي لإلها الصوت هاي سماواتي خياري